The morning sun was soft and warm, casting long shadows across the quiet suburban street. Birds chirped as a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and most neighbors were just beginning their day. One person, a veteran who had recently moved to this calm neighborhood, was taking a morning walk with a service dog. The dog, a large golden-coated animal, was calm and focused, staying close to its owner's side. It was more than just a companion. It was trained to sense anxiety, provide support, and help with mobility. The veteran relied on it in ways many people might not understand, and the bond between them was deep and built on trust. As they walked past neatly kept lawns and houses, the veteran noticed a familiar neighbor standing on the porch. She was known in the area for being strict about rules and often quick to confront others, even for small things. Most people tried to avoid conflicts with her, but today was different. The veteran had no idea that this walk would turn into a confrontation that would shake the calm morning. Without any warning, the neighbor stepped off the porch and raised a spray can toward the service dog. In one swift motion, she released the contents, a chemical irritant, directly at the dog. The dog yelped sharply, a sound that was full of confusion and pain. The veteran reacted instantly, grabbing the dog and pulling it close, shielding it from further harm. The dog's eyes were watering, and it trembled slightly, clearly in shock. The veteran's heart raced, both from concern for the dog and the sudden aggression from the neighbor. People from nearby houses began to peek out of windows or step onto their porches, curious and alarmed. Some started whispering to each other, unsure of what exactly had happened. The neighbor, however, didn't pause. She waved her hands and shouted complaints about rules being broken, insisting she was justified. Her voice was loud and aggressive, echoing down the street. The veteran, though shaken, kept calm. They knew that any sudden move could make the situation worse. But the anger and confusion in their chest was hard to control. Carefully, the veteran moved to a safer spot on the sidewalk, holding the dog close. The chemical irritant had caused the dog's eyes to sting and its fur to smell sharply. The veteran reached for a bottle of water they always carried for the dog and gently rinsed the affected areas. The dog leaned into their touch, its body still tense but slowly beginning to relax. The veteran whispered soft, reassuring words, trying to let the dog know it was safe. Meanwhile, the neighbor continued to shout, calling the veteran names and accusing them of provoking the incident. She was certain that her actions would not have consequences, that she could intimidate anyone into submission. But the veteran stayed grounded, aware that the dog's well-being was the most important thing. Passers-by started to step closer, some showing concern, others merely watching the unfolding drama. One neighbor quietly called the local police, hoping to prevent the situation from escalating further. As the veteran waited, they noticed the dog beginning to breathe more steadily. Its ears perked slightly and its tail gave a small tentative wag. This small sign of recovery gave the veteran hope, reminding them of how resilient and loyal service dogs could be. The veteran knew that even though the dog was trained to help others, it was still an animal with feelings, and it had been hurt by a deliberate act. Their thoughts raced as they considered what steps to take next. Reporting the incident seemed obvious, but they wanted to make sure everything was handled carefully and legally. The veteran spoke calmly to the neighbor, trying to explain the seriousness of what had happened. They mentioned that the dog was a trained service animal, and that harming it could have legal consequences. The neighbor scoffed, waving off the warning and insisting it was no big deal. But the veteran remained composed, understanding that aggression from the neighbor was only meant to provoke a reaction. They knew that staying calm and measured was the key to protecting both themselves and their service dog. Minutes later, the police arrived. The veteran explained the situation in a steady voice, showing documentation proving the dog's training and status as a service animal. Officers observed the dog's condition and noticed the chemical irritant residue. They asked the veteran questions about the events, their relationship with the dog, and the neighbor's behavior. The veteran answered everything honestly and calmly, ensuring that the officers had a clear understanding of what had transpired. The dog, still shaken, sat close to the veteran, occasionally leaning into their touch for reassurance. The neighbor, seeing the police taking the situation seriously, began to hesitate. Her confident demeanor wavered as officers spoke about legal protections for service animals and the importance of addressing assaults against them. The veteran, however, remained focused on the dog, checking its eyes and fur and making sure it was comfortable. Neighbors who had been watching from a distance began to murmur among themselves, some expressing sympathy for the veteran and the dog, while others criticized the neighbor's aggressive behavior. In this tense moment, the veteran realized how important it was to remain composed and focused on facts rather than emotions. The dog had been hurt, and it was essential to ensure it received care and protection. The veteran also understood that by handling the situation calmly and correctly, they were setting an example for others in the community about how to treat service animals with respect and how to deal with confrontations responsibly. Eventually, the veteran and the dog moved to a safer area, while the police continued speaking with the neighbor. The dog leaned against the veteran, trusting them completely even after being sprayed and frightened. The veteran's patience and careful handling had helped the dog begin to recover, and they could feel a growing sense of relief. Even though the morning had started peacefully, it had turned into a challenging and emotional experience. Yet the veteran knew that standing firm and protecting the dog was the right choice. The story of this morning was just beginning, and the veteran knew there would be consequences for the neighbor's actions. But for now, the focus was on calming the dog and ensuring its health. Every gentle touch, every reassuring word helped the dog feel safe again. Passers-by continued to watch quietly, many silently admiring the veteran's calmness and the dog's resilience. The street, once peaceful, now held a sense of awareness that even in quiet neighborhoods, protecting rights and standing up for what is right can be necessary. By the time the veteran and the dog walked back home, the sun had climbed higher, casting brighter light over the street. The dog's breathing had returned to normal, and its tail wagged a little more freely. The veteran felt a sense of pride and determination. This experience, while frightening and painful, was a reminder of the bond they shared and the importance of knowing and asserting legal protections. The morning had started like any other, but it had become a lesson in courage, calmness, and the strength of the connection between a service dog and its handler. After the initial shock of the morning incident, the veteran and the service dog returned home. The dog was still shaken, but with each careful step and reassuring word, it began to relax. The veteran set the dog down on its bed and gently checked its eyes and fur for any remaining residue from the chemical spray. While doing this, they reflected on what had just happened. It was one thing to train a dog, but it was another thing entirely to experience someone intentionally harming it. The feelings of anger and disbelief bubbled under the surface, but the veteran knew staying calm was essential. The dog needed stability, not more stress. Once the dog was settled, the veteran called the local police to follow up on the morning's report. They explained that the dog had been intentionally sprayed, and that there were witnesses who could confirm the neighbor's actions. The officer on the line listened carefully, asking about the dog's training and status as a service animal. The veteran provided the information calmly, sharing the official documentation that proved the dog's federal recognition. The officer acknowledged the seriousness of the report, emphasizing that assaults against service animals were not treated lightly. The veteran felt a sense of relief that the situation was being handled professionally and legally. Meanwhile, the neighbor was beginning to realize that the incident was far more serious than she had anticipated. At first, she had believed that her actions would be shrugged off, that she could intimidate the veteran and go about her day without consequence. But now, with the involvement of law enforcement, the neighbor started to panic. She muttered excuses to herself, trying to convince anyone who would listen that it was an accident, or that the dog had somehow provoked her. Those who witnessed the incident, however, were clear about what had happened, and the neighbor's credibility began to crumble. The veteran, meanwhile, focused on documenting everything. They wrote down the details of the morning, the time the incident occurred, the sequence of events, and the responses from the neighbor and any witnesses. They took pictures of the dog's condition, showing the effects of the chemical spray, and saved any relevant messages or evidence that might help support the case. Being organized and detailed was not just about following the law, it was about making sure the dog's well-being was taken seriously and that justice could be served. As the afternoon progressed, the veteran received a visit from one of the officers who had responded to the original call. The officer came to the house to speak in person, asking questions about the dog, the incident, and the neighborhood dynamics. The veteran explained everything, emphasizing how the dog was trained to assist with PTSD and mobility issues. They described how the dog had helped them in daily life, providing both physical support and emotional stability. The officer listened carefully, taking notes and expressing concern for the dog's safety. This interaction reinforced to the veteran that they were doing the right thing by involving the authorities. During this time, the veteran also began preparing for the possibility of a formal legal proceeding. They reached out to a lawyer who specialized in cases involving service animals and federal protections. The lawyer explained the rights of service dog handlers and the potential consequences for anyone who intentionally harms such an animal. They discussed strategies for presenting evidence, witness statements, and documentation to ensure that the case was handled effectively. The veteran appreciated the guidance, feeling more empowered to protect the dog and assert their legal rights. Meanwhile, the neighbor continued to grow more anxious. She began asking other neighbors for advice, trying to figure out how to minimize the situation. Her questions were hesitant, and her usual confidence was noticeably absent. People who knew the veteran well began sharing their support, emphasizing that harming a service dog was a serious matter. The neighborhood, which had previously been quiet and routine, started to feel the ripple effects of the morning's event. People talked quietly among themselves, reflecting on how important it was to respect the rights of service animal handlers and how quickly a seemingly minor confrontation could escalate. Throughout all of this, the veteran remained focused on the dog. They continued providing comfort, gentle massages, and calm, reassuring words. Every small movement was meant to reassure the dog that it was safe. They offered water, light treats, and encouragement, letting the dog know that the human world could still be trusted. The bond between the veteran and the dog grew even stronger in these moments of care, reinforcing the idea that trust and calmness were essential in overcoming fear. As the day went on, the veteran reflected on the broader implications of the incident. They thought about how many people might not understand the importance of service animals or the legal protections in place. They considered the responsibility of being a service dog handler, not only to care for the dog but also to educate others about their rights and the importance of respecting service animals. This reflection added a layer of determination, a commitment to ensure that what happened would not be repeated, not just for them, but for anyone who relied on a service animal. Later, the police contacted the veteran to provide an update. They explained that the neighbor was now under investigation and that the incident would be documented as a potential federal violation. The veteran listened carefully, noting every detail. The officer advised them to keep all evidence safe and to continue documenting any interactions related to the case. The seriousness of the situation began to sink in for the neighbor, who realized that this was no longer a local issue. It had potential federal implications. She froze, the reality of her actions setting in, as she faced the possibility of legal consequences that went far beyond the neighborhood. Even as the neighbor's panic grew, the veteran remained calm and focused on the dog. They spent time reinforcing routines that helped the dog feel secure: short walks around the yard, quiet rest periods, and gentle exercises that reminded the dog of its training. Each activity was infused with patience and understanding, ensuring the dog could regain confidence after being sprayed. The veteran's attention to these small details highlighted the human-centric nature of their care, showing a deep commitment to the animal's well-being. Throughout the evening, neighbors continued to express support for the veteran and the service dog. Some brought small gestures of kindness, like offering to check on the dog or sharing stories about their own pets. This sense of community reinforced the veteran's belief that handling the situation calmly and responsibly was the right approach. The morning's confrontation, while frightening and unfair, had brought out support and awareness in the neighborhood, showing the importance of standing up for what is right. As night approached, the veteran reflected on the lessons learned from the day. They understood that asserting legal rights was not about confrontation, but about protection and responsibility. They recognized the power of calmness, preparation, and documentation. Most importantly, they saw the resilience of the service dog, which had faced aggression yet trusted its handler completely. This trust and loyalty underscored the bond that made service animals irreplaceable companions. By the time the household settled for the night, the dog was resting peacefully, its breathing steady and its body relaxed. The veteran watched over it for a while, grateful for the calm after the storm. They knew the situation with the neighbor was not over, but they also knew that they had done everything correctly, protecting the dog, involving authorities, and maintaining composure. The veteran understood that the days ahead might bring further challenges, but they felt ready to face them, knowing that preparation, patience, and the bond with their service dog would see them through. In the quiet of the evening, the veteran felt a sense of purpose. The morning had started as a routine walk, but it had turned into a test of patience, courage, and awareness. They reflected on how crucial it was to stand up for rights, remain calm under pressure, and trust in the systems that exist to protect service animals. The bond between the veteran and the dog had only grown stronger, proving that even in difficult moments, care, love, and dedication could guide them forward. The day's events would be remembered not just as a challenge, but as a powerful reminder of resilience, trust, and the importance of doing what is right. The next morning, the veteran woke up early as usual, the morning light spilling softly into the bedroom. The service dog was already awake, sitting quietly by the bed ready to start the day. Despite the events of the previous morning, the dog seemed calmer, its trust in the veteran stronger than ever. The veteran reflected on how resilient the animal was, how it had faced fear and pain but still leaned on them for comfort and security. They knew that protecting the dog was not just about the law but about nurturing this unique bond. After breakfast, the veteran decided to take the dog for a short walk around the neighborhood, both for exercise and to reinforce a sense of normalcy. The air was crisp and the streets were quiet, except for the occasional passing car. The veteran kept a calm and steady pace, allowing the dog to sniff the grass and trees, gradually regaining confidence in its surroundings. They stayed alert, aware that the neighbor from the previous day might be watching or waiting to cause more trouble. But they refused to let fear dictate their actions. As they walked, the veteran noticed a few neighbors standing outside their homes observing the scene. Some waved, offering smiles and words of encouragement, while others simply watched quietly. The veteran appreciated these gestures, small signs of community support, which reinforced their decision to handle the situation calmly and responsibly. The dog, sensing the veteran's composed mood, stayed close and focused, walking with purpose rather than fear. Meanwhile, the aggressive neighbor had begun to realize the gravity of the situation. After the police visit the previous day, she had spent hours trying to convince herself that the incident could be dismissed, that it was just a misunderstanding. But now the reality was sinking in. The veteran had documentation proving the dog's status as a service animal, witnesses who had seen the assault, and law enforcement fully aware of the situation. The neighbor's confidence, which had seemed unshakable just days before, was cracking under the weight of potential legal consequences. Back on the street, the veteran continued the walk with the dog, feeling a mix of determination and caution. They were aware that the neighbor might approach them, trying to escalate the confrontation or intimidate them further. However, the veteran stayed focused on their goal, keeping the dog safe and calm, and ensuring that any encounter remained within legal boundaries. Every step was deliberate, every movement measured, reflecting the discipline that had been instilled through years of training and experience. As they passed the neighbor's house, the neighbor appeared on the porch, hesitating before stepping outside. Her usual loud and aggressive demeanor seemed diminished, replaced by nervousness. The veteran made no sudden movements, keeping the dog close and calm. The neighbor opened her mouth to speak, but her words faltered. She seemed unsure of what to say, realizing that her actions from the previous day were being taken seriously by the authorities. The veteran, sensing her hesitation, did not engage. Instead, they continued walking, signaling through calm body language that they were not seeking conflict, but were prepared to defend their rights. By mid-morning, the veteran returned home and began preparing additional documentation and evidence in case further legal action became necessary. They organized witness statements, photographs of the dog, and records of the dog's training and service certification. This preparation was meticulous, a way to ensure that if the neighbor attempted to challenge the situation, the veteran would be fully ready. The process was also therapeutic, helping the veteran channel their emotions into constructive action rather than anger or frustration. Throughout the day, the veteran received several phone calls from neighbors offering support and sharing their own experiences with service animals. These conversations were encouraging, reinforcing the importance of community awareness and understanding. The veteran shared insights about the responsibilities of owning a service dog, emphasizing how crucial it was for people to respect these animals and the laws protecting them. Each conversation strengthened the veteran's resolve to handle the situation with patience, knowledge, and composure. In the afternoon, the police returned to provide an update on the investigation. They explained that the neighbor was being questioned and that the incident was now classified as a potential violation of federal law due to the dog's status as a service animal. The veteran listened carefully, noting the details and instructions given by the officers. They were advised to continue monitoring the dog's well-being, to keep all evidence organized, and to report any further incidents immediately. The gravity of the situation was becoming clear, but the veteran remained calm, confident in the steps they had taken and the legal protections in place. The neighbor, aware of the police's involvement and the potential for federal consequences, became increasingly anxious. Her previous bravado had evaporated, replaced by fear and uncertainty. She attempted to seek advice from other neighbors, but few were willing to support her aggressive stance. The veteran, meanwhile, continued to demonstrate composure and patience, showing that standing firm did not require confrontation, but a clear understanding of rights and responsibilities. As evening approached, the veteran focused on helping the dog relax after another day filled with stress and tension. They spent time on quiet activities in the yard, allowing the dog to explore and play while maintaining a safe distance from the neighbor's property. Gentle encouragement, treats, and calm words helped the dog regain confidence. The veteran marveled at the dog's resilience, recognizing that this recovery was a direct result of trust and the strong bond they shared. Throughout the evening, the veteran reflected on the lessons of the past 2 days. They understood that service animals were not just companions but critical partners, and that protecting them required knowledge, patience, and courage. They also recognized the importance of remaining calm in the face of aggression, relying on facts, evidence, and legal protections rather than reacting emotionally. This approach not only safeguarded the dog, but also ensured that the situation would be addressed appropriately by the authorities. Neighbors continued to check in, expressing their support and curiosity about service animal laws. The veteran used these moments to educate others, sharing the responsibilities involved and the consequences of harming a service dog. These conversations helped spread awareness, creating a community that was more informed and empathetic. The veteran felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that the morning's incident, while upsetting, was fostering understanding and respect for service animals. As night fell, the veteran prepared for a quiet evening with the dog, reflecting on how quickly life could change. A peaceful morning walk had turned into a legal and emotional challenge, testing patience, knowledge, and resilience. Yet through it all, the veteran had remained calm, supported the dog, and taken steps to ensure justice would be served. The dog, sensing the veteran's steady presence, rested comfortably at their feet, its breathing even and relaxed. The veteran understood that the situation with the neighbor was far from over, but they also knew that they had taken the correct steps. By documenting the incident, involving law enforcement and maintaining a composed demeanor, they had set a clear example of how to handle conflicts with both courage and wisdom. The bond between the veteran and the dog had only deepened, proving that trust, patience, and understanding were powerful tools in overcoming fear and aggression. Before going to bed, the veteran spent a few quiet moments with the dog, gently stroking its fur and speaking softly. The dog leaned into the touch, its eyes closing in relaxation. The veteran thought about the days ahead, aware that there would likely be more challenges with the neighbor, but confident that they were prepared. The dog's calm and trust were reminders of why it was essential to remain composed and focused, even when confronted with hostility. By the time the lights were turned off, the veteran felt a sense of quiet determination. The morning's incident had tested their patience, knowledge, and ability to protect their service dog. Yet it had also reinforced the bond between them and the dog, highlighted the importance of community support, and demonstrated the value of knowing and asserting legal rights. The day had been a lesson in resilience, patience, and the power of standing firm while remaining calm, and both the veteran and the dog were stronger for it. The morning started quietly, the sun rising over the neighborhood with a soft glow. The veteran and the service dog began their routine walk, moving slowly through familiar streets. The dog, calmer now after the recent stressful events, stayed close to the veteran's side. Its confidence was returning, but the memory of the spray from a few days ago still lingered. Every step was careful, with the veteran paying close attention to the dog's reactions, making sure it felt safe and supported. The veteran noticed the neighbor from the previous incident standing at her porch, peering out cautiously. Her usual assertive demeanor had disappeared, replaced by hesitation and visible nervousness. It was clear she understood that her actions were being taken seriously. She did not shout or wave, only watched quietly as the veteran and the dog walked past. The veteran did not engage or react, simply keeping a steady pace and allowing the dog to feel secure. This calm approach emphasized that they were not seeking confrontation, but were prepared to assert their rights if necessary. Later that day, the police contacted the veteran to provide an update. They explained that the neighbor had been formally questioned and that the investigation was ongoing. The veteran listened carefully, taking notes on every detail. The officers advised continuing to document the dog's well-being, maintain records of any interactions with the neighbor, and report anything unusual immediately. The mention of federal involvement added gravity to the situation, showing that harming a service animal carried serious consequences. The veteran felt a mixture of relief and determination, knowing that legal protections were firmly on their side. Throughout the afternoon, the veteran focused on the dog, giving it extra attention and care. They practiced training exercises to reinforce confidence and calm behavior, speaking softly and offering treats as positive reinforcement. The dog responded well, its tail wagging slightly and its ears perked with interest. These small moments of normalcy were crucial for both the dog and the veteran, allowing them to rebuild trust and routine after the trauma of being sprayed. Meanwhile, the neighbor's anxiety continued to grow. She had begun to understand that the incident was not a simple neighborhood dispute, but a matter with potential federal implications. Her attempts to seek advice from other neighbors were met with cautious responses, and she realized that her usual tactics of intimidation and deflection would not work here. The veteran, aware of this shift in the neighbor's behavior, maintained a calm distance, letting the legal process unfold without unnecessary provocation. During the day, the veteran also received supportive messages from neighbors who had witnessed the initial incident. Some expressed concern for the dog, while others praised the veteran for handling the situation responsibly. These gestures reinforced the sense of community and understanding, highlighting that standing up for rights and protecting service animals was important. The veteran shared insights about the legal protections for service animals, educating neighbors on why these laws exist and how they ensure safety for both animals and their handlers. As evening approached, the veteran prepared for a more relaxed time at home, focusing on activities that would help the dog feel secure. They set up a familiar area in the living room with toys, a comfortable bed, and a quiet atmosphere. The dog explored cautiously at first, but soon settled into the environment, reassured by the veteran's calm presence. This routine was vital, helping the dog recover from stress and rebuild confidence in its surroundings. The veteran also continued organizing evidence and documentation related to the incident. They kept records of witness statements, photographs of the dog, and copies of all official documents verifying the dog's service status. This careful preparation was both practical and comforting, ensuring that any legal proceedings could be handled smoothly. The veteran understood that maintaining thorough records demonstrated responsibility and credibility, making it clear that they were committed to protecting the dog. During the evening, the veteran reflected on the broader lessons of the incident. They realized that being a service dog handler was not just about caring for the animal, but also about being knowledgeable, patient, and prepared to assert rights when necessary. The dog had been trained to assist, but it relied on the veteran to navigate the human world safely. This understanding reinforced the bond between them, emphasizing trust, patience, and mutual support. The neighbor, increasingly aware of the serious consequences she could face, seemed trapped in a state of panic. Her attempts to regain control of the situation were failing, and her previous confidence had dissolved. The veteran, observing from a distance, remained composed, knowing that the neighbor's reaction was irrelevant to the care and protection of the dog. Staying calm and focused was the most effective strategy, both legally and emotionally. Later, the veteran spent time discussing the situation with a legal advisor. They reviewed the incident, the documentation collected, and possible next steps. The advisor emphasized the importance of remaining calm, following proper procedures, and continuing to prioritize the dog's well-being. This guidance reinforced the veteran's approach, showing that patience, organization, and knowledge were key in handling situations involving service animals and potential legal violations. As night fell, the veteran focused on creating a comforting environment for the dog. They engaged in quiet play, soft talking, and gentle grooming. The dog responded positively, leaning into the veteran's touch and showing signs of relaxation. These moments strengthened their bond, providing reassurance and emotional support. The veteran understood that while the legal aspects were important, the dog's emotional recovery was equally vital. Throughout the evening, the veteran reflected on the importance of community awareness and education regarding service animals. The incident had highlighted how many people might not fully understand the responsibilities and protections involved. By handling the situation calmly and correctly, the veteran not only protected the dog, but also set an example for others, showing the value of respect, patience, and knowledge. Before going to sleep, the veteran spent several quiet moments with the dog, gently stroking its fur and speaking softly. The dog rested its head on the veteran's lap, its breathing steady and calm. The events of the past few days had been challenging, but they had also reinforced the strength of the bond between them. The veteran knew that the neighbor's actions could have serious consequences, and the legal process would continue, but for now, the focus was on the dog's safety, comfort, and emotional well-being. The day had tested the veteran's patience, composure, and understanding of legal protections, yet they had handled it with care and wisdom. The dog, resilient and loyal, had faced fear but leaned on the veteran for support. The neighborhood, now more aware of service animal laws, had begun to show subtle signs of respect and understanding. The veteran felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that through calm, deliberate actions, they had protected the dog, upheld their rights, and set an example of how to respond to aggression responsibly. As the lights went out, the veteran reflected on the journey so far. The morning's walk, which could have been routine, had escalated into a test of knowledge, patience, and resilience. Yet by staying calm, providing care, and relying on legal protections, the veteran had turned a potentially traumatic situation into a moment of empowerment. The bond with the service dog had strengthened, and the sense of community support provided reassurance that standing up for what was right mattered. The veteran drifted to sleep, confident that both they and the dog were prepared for whatever challenges might come next.